What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to do a combination of a review slash analysis, but probably more so an analysis of the themes, symbolism, and metaphors presented in the movie School Daze by Spike Lee, released in 1988. Yeah, this movie's almost 30 years old, so yeah, this movie old as hell. Um, but before I get into this review, I just want to give a quick shout out to YouTube user B Money for asking me my opinion about School Daze. I knew about the movie prior to the question, but I haven't watched the movie in a while, so I was thinking like maybe I should watch the movie again and sort of talk about the theme, symbolism, metaphors, etc. that were presented in the movie. So pretty much just shout out and thanks to B Money for kind of like planting that idea or planting that seed to lead to that idea. So thanks a lot. All right, let's get into this. Hopefully I probably wouldn't be too long. I don't think I'm going to be too long. I don't know. All right. So the movie School Daze, it begins with like kind of like a Black history montage, if you will. Kind of like throughout the years and the centuries of like famous Black folk, and Black activists in our community and whatnot. So I'm like, okay. So I'm guessing they're kind of setting us up for something a bit more kind of like, okay, this movie's going to have something to do with Black activism, perhaps, of some sort, right? All right, so then we get to like, I guess it's Friday and it's a Mission College, right? This is a fictitious, I believe, HBCU, right? And Lawrence Fishburne, Dab, he is giving this speech and he's being all militant and whatnot, right? And sidebar, like I kind of don't know which side that Lawrence Fishburne's character is on, in the sense of like skin tone, not like if he's like pro black or not or anything, but in the sense of skin tone. Because sometimes in some scenes he'd be looking kind of bright, but then other scenes he'd be looking a little dark. But I think in the movie he claims the dark side, So yeah, I just found that a little interesting. Let's see. Lawrence Fishburne. So they're talking about like South Africa, right? And that got me to kind of thinking like, should we as Black people be sort of concerned with other Black people in the diaspora, in the sense, like, of course we should be concerned, but in the sense like, should we be advocating for them? And I bring this up because sometimes when we talk about other groups of people and coming to their defense, like lately in the community, the pro-Black community, right? It's been like basically the topic and theme has been, oh no, they need to fight their own battles. Like we come to their defense, and when we need help, they don't come to our defense, right? And I agree with that. So I was thinking, and it got me thinking in this particular situation. I'm like, well, do South African people really come to the defense of Black people, or do any African people come to the defense of Black Americans, right? Let's be specific. Black people in America. Black African Americans. I guess that's pretty redundant, but you know what I'm saying, right? And let's think about this. I know we gotta, let's go there, all right? Historically, has Africa had Black people in America's back? Historically speaking, no. Historically speaking, the reason that we're in this situation in America is partially because of Black people. Well, African people, right? Particularly West African people, right? because they helped Europeans capture us and enslave us. They did not see the value of having, like, they didn't see the value in us, right? And then some people speculate that this has something to do with, like, oh, black people blended in there, but they weren't really like African, they were really the Jewish people, or I guess the Hebrew Israelites, is what they say. I heard that, that is a theory that's been thrown around. But let's stick with the now, right? Let's just leave the religion part out of it. So yeah, basically, black folks, African folks screwed us over, right? So I'm thinking, bringing this back to this situation, like, should we really be advocating for African people as a group? I can see in some instances, yes, because, they could be viewed as like a proxy, right? But on the other hand, it's like, well, do these folks really give a damn about us? Let's be real. Do African people in Africa really give a damn about black people, African American people? That's the question I need somebody to answer. I think the answer is, overall, no. By and large, no, right? From what I've heard, I could be wrong, but from what I heard, like, sometimes they kind of view us in a negative light, right? Also, one thing that kind of really just speaks volumes is that they thought that we just went off and just had a very just picturesque life in America, right? Just getting captured by these Europeans, and they just went off and had a wonderful life in America, right? Because they just see like the media and stuff, but because they don't know like all that we went, like the hell on earth that we went through because of these savage European cave devils who wanted to just destroy us, exploit us, rape us. Just the most brutal things that you can do to human beings, right? But they don't really. They're like, oh, y'all just have it so easy in America, right? I could probably do a whole video on this. So let me just stick to this, what's in front of me and I got written down. But yeah, I could probably do a whole video on that topic. But back to school days, all right? All right, and I'm looking down because I got like stuff written down. Okay. The frat dude interrupts. Well, the leader of the frat dude, I guess Julian is his name. I'm not really good with names when it comes to movies. I'm better with names when it comes to television shows because they constantly say the names a lot. But yeah, so him and Julian and Dab have a back and forth, and in this back and forth, I think Dab says something to the effect of, "You need to wake up, Julian." And that wake up theme is, reoccurring throughout this movie, right? Right? Wake up. And I think Spike Lee is presenting that as like to become conscious, socially conscious, right? And to, wake up and realize the system that you're in, etc., right? And a sidebar, again, all right, so a couple of days ago, I met up with a former coworker, a buddy of mine I hadn't seen in a couple of years, right? We communicated and kept in touch through Facebook, but we wind up meeting up and hanging out for a while. And in this, in the time that we were hanging out, we wind up getting on the topic of kind of like, what's going on now, current events and things like that. And he had said some things that I'm like, okay, I think you gotta be asleep. And that's the thing, when you woke, you think everybody woke, or everyone should be woke, right? When you woke, right? Because I know I kind of do. I'm like, how could you be asleep? Like, it's just so obvious that, like, how could you be asleep? But to be fair, we all had moments or a while when we were asleep. We weren't just born conscious, and the system does set it up for you to be asleep, to be fair. But as far as my uh, buddy is concerned, you know, he had said something like, "Oh, like these interracial, like we were in this area and we were seeing like a lot of interracial couples in this area, you know." Actually, a lot of like black women with like uh, Caucasian men for some reason. There was other interracial couples, but I remember seeing that one occur a lot. And he said like, "Oh, that's going to end racism." I'm like, "No, it's not. That's not." And when he said that, like Cynthia G popped into my head. I'm like, Cynthia G would not approve of this. Because I listen to her videos sometimes about like interracial dating and stuff, and she makes like really good points about that, you know. And I had brought up some of those points about it too, kind of like doing an each one teach one, not trying to come off as preachy, but trying to, educate your fellow folk, right? Side note, he is a native African, by the way, if that maybe factors in, perhaps. But yeah, so I was like, no, 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 and explain the reasoning why that is, because like I said, interracial relationships have been going on at least since slavery, right? That has not quelled or decreased racism. And right now, racism is at an all-time high, but so is interracial dating, right? Um, and as well, I definitely brought up like, well, to put it this way, like if Rebecca can get both, well, if Rebecca can have both white privilege and BBC, I think Rebecca is going to have both white privilege and BBC. All right. Because what reason does Rebecca have to give up her white privilege or to challenge her white privilege if she can have the BBC and her white privilege? Like, if you can have two things, like two good things, you would have two good things, right? You won't just settle for one. It's like, hey, you can have this, or you can have this and this. Both, all of them are good, but you can have a little bit more of a good thing, right? So why? you know? Then he had said something to the extent of like, black people are the most racist people. I'm like, whoa, come on. Like, are you serious now? Come on. I say like black people can be bigoted, right? Can be prejudiced, right? But not racist, right? Because racism is a combination of prejudice and power. Black people are not in the position to put their prejudice or to put power behind their prejudice, right? They cannot construct laws, set up systems where they can disenfranchise you, right? We can just call some folks some names. We can say some hurtful things. Granted, we say hurtful things to each other too, to be real. And guess where that comes from? Racism, right? you know. Then I had to, attempted to make a connection, trying to, do it again, each one teach one, right? Because, we all were asleep at one point. So, try and, nudge. Because that's the thing, though. You can't bring someone to wake up, right? They ultimately have to wake up on their own. You can nudge. You can, shake, even, yell. But ultimately, you got to wake up on your own, right? You can't bring someone to liberation. Like, liberation ain't for everybody. Sometimes that's a hard thing to accept, but liberation ain't for everybody. Ask Harriet Tubman. Well, we can't, but you know what I'm saying, right? Harriet Tubman, right? Like she said, if only they knew they were slaves, she could have freed a lot more if only they knew they were slaves, right? But let me bring it back. So he didn't really think that, like, he kind of was confusing like racism and prejudice and bigotry and stuff like that, and making it seem like more so it was just a combination of like just calling folks names, but it's more than that. And I just presented an example of like, oh, well, what about our, well, I presented it like this. Okay, ask a white person, how has black racism affected their life? Right? Come on. Now ask a black person how white racism has affected their life. They will give you they have a lot of things to talk about if you ask a black person that question, right? And I got that from, I think, Joy DeGruy, or DeGruy, by the way. I think she kind of likes that, like Dr. Joy DeGruy. She kind of does, she has some videos floating around on YouTube about, talking about, racism and post-traumatic slave syndrome and, kind of like medical stuff relating to black people and how a whole bunch of stuff, really. So check her out if you're interested. But yeah, that was a sidebar, but I really think I needed to go on that sidebar because it just sometimes, I don't know, when you're dealing in a certain, when you're in a certain situation, sometimes you kind of think that, oh, everyone should be woke, But wokeness sometimes isn't isn't as common as you think it should be. All right. So Tisha Campbell in this movie, I don't remember her character's name, but Tisha in this movie, they really seem to be kind of like bigging Tisha up to be like this, drop dead gorgeous, light skinned chick, And no shade to Tisha Campbell because I don't think she's like ugly or anything, but I kind of do think some of her sorrows may have perhaps been slightly better for that role. But, it's Tisha Campbell, so, I guess we can let it slide, right? But yeah, she had like this like blonde-esque, like blondish hair too. Thus contributing to like the wannabe stereotype, right? Which I'll get into that a little later in this video. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, in the movie, Julian and Spike Lee's character Half Pint kind of have a bit of an exchange, and Julian is questioning Half Pint about his virginity, basically, and he's like, Julian says, you need to bring a freak back to this house to prove it or whatever. So Half Pint, like when he was talking to all these women trying to, I guess, bring him back, notice that the majority of the women he was talking to were light-skinned for some reason. I'm not sure if that was meant to be meant to mean anything, but is it like saying like, oh, the light-skinned girls are freaks? Are like the light-skinned girls really sexual? Because there weren't any dark-skinned girls you were talking to. But then again, was it like, well, maybe, okay, he views them as like the prize, so to speak, and maybe he's not attracted to the dark-skinned girls? That's just something to think about. Also, to note, in real life, Spike Lee's wife, I don't know if they're still married or not, I'm not sure, but is light-skinned. I don't know if she's like mixed or biracial, but she is like really light-skinned though. Something to think about, right? Don't they say like life imitates art, or art imitates life? One of the two. All right. So next on this list I got here. So they were talking, like the light-skinned chicks at this sorority place or whatever, right? They were talking about, I guess, putting together some event, and one of the light-skinned chicks had mentioned, like, oh, don't bring no hip hop b-boy nonsense to this event. Like, as far as the music is concerned, like no hip hop, no b-boy nonsense, etc. Right? Which I found a little weird. I guess that seemed to be contributing to that bougie wannabe stereotype. Like, I'm like, we all black, right? It seemed like it was kind of like a knock to blackness in a way, you know. But maybe it's like a class thing. It's like a certain type of black, because there is classism within blackness. We know that, right? Because some upper class black folks do not be fooling with the low common or working class folks. They'd be like, mm-mm, I am not. Like, they want to let you know, like, they are not a nigga, all right? Let's see. Dark-skinned girls versus light-skinned girls. So they wind up, like, the light-skinned chicks were like walking in the hall, then the dark-skinned chicks were in the hall too. They wound up kind of like running into each other, then having some sassy back and forth with each other. And then one girl called out Tisha Campbell when Tisha Campbell like flipped her hair a little bit, and then she's like, "That ain't your real hair." And that's the thing that's we can talk about too. It's like when it comes to light-skinned chicks, sometimes we assume. And by the way, when I say light-skinned, biracial and mixed is kind of included in that. If it's not, I'll specify. All right. But yeah, when sometimes like light-skinned chicks are given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to their hair, right? Like, oh, you have such beautiful hair. Like, oftentimes people believe it's their hair, when a lot of the times it's not their hair though. And then when like the dark skinned chicks have like long flowing beautiful hair, folks be skeptical about it and be analyzing and want to like dissect and like go in and like, is that your real hair? There's like a YouTube user named Sister with the Real Hair. If you type in that like as a phrase on YouTube, it'll come up with her hair. Well, her as well as her hair. But yeah, she had kind of spoke on that too, because like she's a dark-skinned woman, seemingly not mixed, right? And she has like quote unquote beautiful and good looking hair, right? Because the way that she takes care of it, like she really invests a lot of time into the upkeep of her hair, right? And people in like her day-to-day life ask her like, is that her real hair? Because they just don't believe it, because the way that it looks really good, But yeah, check her out if you get an opportunity. Good stuff. Yeah, she gives like hair care tips too, by the way. All right, next on this list, they were all calling, let's see, they talked about blue contacts, thus contributing to the wannabe stereotype again, like, oh, you want to be white and whatnot. Then they started calling each other names, the dark-skinned girls got called, well, I guess I'll start with the light-skinned girls. All right, the light-skinned girls got called, Barbie doll, high yellow heifer, wannabe white, right? Then the dark-skinned girls got called pickaninny, tar babies, and jigaboos. I'm not sure what exactly is a jigaboo. I don't know. But y'all remember when that old racist crustacean looking dude Don Imus called like that group of black female basketball players jigaboos? Y'all remember that? That happened like a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, but yeah, y'all remember that. I wonder what that crustacean's up to now. Let's see. So after this exchange, they go into this whole like dance, or I guess musical number rather, of like the wannabes versus the jigaboos, and the jigaboos versus the wannabes, right? And the wannabes seem to be more so like the light-skinned chicks, while the jigaboos seem to be more so like the dark-skinned chicks, right? But this is more so about good and bad hair, but it seems like the line is drawn between light skin and dark skin mostly. But I did notice that there was a light-skinned girl, or at least one on the jigaboo side, and there was a dark, a girl who would be considered like dark skin on the wannabe side, right? So they were all talking about good and bad hair and singing a dance number about that, right? And that kind of got me thinking for a quick moment. I'm like, this sort of applies to kind of like Chili and T-Boz from TLC, because like I kind of view like sometimes like some people sort of get like an honorary pass as being like sometimes like maybe like spiritually, I guess, quote unquote, light skin or spiritually dark skin, you know. But let me explain. Kind of like when it, like say Chili and T-Boz from TLC, right? Chili is kind of like the girl with the quote unquote good hair, and she was considered like the sexy one, and you know, she's more so like the, I guess, the more demure one. While T-Boz, who is like light skin, is kind of seen like as maybe like the slightly like the around the way girl type. And I think T-Boz tends to wear like kind of like extensions and tracks and weave and that sort of thing. And this was seen more so as like, the cool one, right? Because a lot of times when we think of like light skin and dark skin, we do kind of have like a set, like we stereotype personality traits to those skin tones, right? A lot of times we think that dark skinned people will act a certain way, while we think that light skinned people will act a certain way as well. And that's sometimes that's true, but sometimes that's not true, right? You know, I guess like Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club says and jokes like Chris Brown got dark skin tendencies. And I think, while that's like haha, kiki, joke, I take that as, joke, but I think it has some truth in it a little bit as well. Like, what exactly makes him have dark skin tendencies, though, right? That's the thing. Like, is it because like he's maybe more considered more aggressive? Maybe he's violent, but then that's like a whole nother video too. Like, this definitely runs deep, but yeah. And also, Chris Brown has a thing for light-skinned exotic chicks too. Another stereotype that's associated with dark-skinned black men. But let's move on to the next topic. All right. So Tisha Campbell and a couple of her girls put on a performance for this event or whatever. And again, they seem to be hyping her up and like kind of like making sure that she is like the fairest one of all. That's why they gave her that blonde hair, right? Because oftentimes, the fairest one of all is associated with, beauty, right? Then in the movie, they talk about, let's see, Dab's girlfriend Rachel brings up something that's really important, and I really think that needs to be addressed. So she was talking with her boyfriend Dab, and Rachel, who's dark skinned, she had brought something up to the extent of like, oh, I think sometimes the only reason you're with me is for your image because I'm like, the darkest woman on campus. And it kind of plays into like the pro-black image that Dab has, right? And that got me sort of thinking, and I may end up doing a video about this perhaps at one point or another, but as far as like colorism is concerned, it's like, do you think that maybe like, okay, Yaba Blay from the Black in America documentary that aired on CNN with Soledad O'Brien, right? Yaba Blay had mentioned that she feels like colorism gives dark-skinned people self-esteem issues, while it gives light-skinned people identity issues. So my question is, do you think that light-skinned people sometimes may take advantage of perhaps dark-skinned people's quote-unquote self-esteem issues? Not saying that all dark-skinned people have self-esteem issues, of course, right? But making these assumptions, you know, do you think that perhaps we could say in some instances, perhaps that dark-skinned or light-skinned folks take advantage of dark-skinned folks at times, as far as like maybe a dating situation is concerned, right? Like, you know, well, maybe that's another video for another day, you know. And we can flip it around too, right? And talk about, do you think that dark-skinned people take advantage of light-skinned people's like identity issues? Not to say that every light-skinned person has an identity issue, of course, but just something to think about. So on the parade, or in the parade, or during the parade, right? Tisha Campbell's on the float, and they're doing like some Illuminati-looking float. It's like a pyramid, right? And when the pyramid opens, she's there, and I think that sort of symbolizes like light-skinned women being put on a pedestal, right? Because they're just making such a big deal about her, like, wow, you know. And that's just so symbolic of like the light-skinned girls being put on a pedestal in the black community, right? Let's see. The president and vice president, or whoever they are, right? The overseers, right? Who, you know, oversees the student population, the student body. I think talk with Dab about some issues or whatever. And I kind of feel like, I don't know, the older generation sometimes it's like, oh, this is good enough, right? While Dab, right, seems to be like, oh, let's continue further with this activism and stuff like that, you know? And I think that kind of symbolizes a disconnect that I think the older generation has with the younger generation, right? And I think also it speaks to like the torch, like the older people did not pass the torch to the to the younger generation as far as like the activism is concerned. I think young people do activism, but not in the same way, and that could be possibly because they don't agree with the way that the older generation did their activism with, like, you know, the nonviolence and, you know, taking violence, etc., right? They weren't down with the whole civil rights movement type of activism, right? They were, you know, seemingly more so looking for something a bit more militant, perhaps. And I just think that's something that could be explored as a topic at one point or another, too. Let's see. KFC, I guess came up somewhere. KFC, at KFC, I guess at one point or another, the dudes wind up going to KFC, and this is where it's like Samuel L. Jackson's character comes in, and they wind up having some like back and forth with each other, and I think that sort of symbolizes like the friction between kind of like the educated black people versus the uneducated black people, or perhaps the working class black people who, you know, didn't go to college, you know. And there's sort of being like a disconnect between those two groups at times, right? And sometimes, you know, like I said, the classism thing, that plays a part in like disconnect between black people too. Because on the outside looking in, you think that all black people just are in the same position, but they're not. Some black people are in high-ranking positions. Some are in like, you know, mid-ranking, and some are just, you know, in like a lower class position. And at the end of the movie, the theme of wake up, definitely was thrown in our face, like just shaking us, like wake up, Negro, wake up. Like we can't afford to have any black folks asleep. But that's the thing, though. Some black people don't want to wake up, though. That's the thing too. Like you can't wake folks up. Like I know Spike Lee, he was not. He probably knows that, right? But again, he's just shaking. He's trying to kind of like start the process, right? Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the movie. As far as like the themes and symbolisms and metaphors are concerned, overall, I thought it was a decent and enjoyable movie. It talked about some issues. It wasn't as colorism based as I thought it would be, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But yeah, because I've seen the movie before, but I saw it like a while ago, so I wasn't really familiar with certain things about the movie. So I was like, well, if I'm going to talk about this movie, I should probably watch it again. So this is why, I'm part of the reason why I'm doing this video, right? But have you watched the movie before? What did you think of the movie? Did you see it when it was first released? I know the hell I didn't. This movie old as hell, so I didn't see this movie when it was first released, even though I was alive when it was first released. But I don't think I was really giving a damn about any themes like this at that time. You know. But yeah, I have seen the movie before, and I've seen it again now. And overall, I think it's an interesting movie. And I think it sort of is like a movie that, you'll probably see again at some point. And that's kind of still is relevant today. It was made like 30 years ago, but it's still kind of relevant today. Oh, yeah, unfortunately, it is still relevant. Wow. One thing I kind of wish there was a more like light-skinned male representation in this movie. I did see them, but they didn't seem to really have much of a speaking role. I feel like the peanut butter dudes, seem to have a speaking role a lot. While I think like the dark-skinned dudes, right? Like, the really dark-skinned dudes, right? Didn't seem to have much of a speaking role either. And that's the thing too that I really think that we as a community sort of overlook or ignore, and that is how brown people play into colorism. Because sometimes brown people, like the peanut butter brown skinned folks, say some of the most fucked up shit about, especially like dark skinned people. Look at YouTube, right? The crispy puppet, right? Not saying that that person is not deserving of that, right? But overall, being honest, right? That is something that's, foul. I mean, if it's foul, if something's foul going to happen, something bad, I think it did happen to the right person, considering that person's history about them saying like really foul, messed up mess and BS, especially against black women, and more especially against dark-skinned black women. And again, I think that he was the right person for that to happen to. But overall, I do kind of think that's like wrong to do. But it's kind of it's wrong, but it's justified, right? But yeah, so oftentimes when you do hear some really like foul shit about like dark skinned people, especially, a lot of times it's coming from like brown skinned folks. You'd think it would be coming from light skinned folks, considering how light skinned people are like stereotyped. But in my personal experience, I tend to hear it more so from like kind of like the in between brown skinned peanut butter type of folks. I think honestly, like light-skinned people as a collective cannot get away with saying foul shit about dark-skinned people, and I really don't think they want to as a collective. I mean, perhaps as a like a rebuttal or a response or a defense to someone saying something foul about them, but just not just out of the blue, right? Because, and the way I see it is, oftentimes I think light-skinned people are sort of given sort of like a pass in certain situations when it comes to like racism, where they like some things don't seem to affect them as much as like their darker skinned brethren and sisterin, right? So because of that, I think some light skinned people kind of are in a position where they can sort of just be somewhat, footloose and fancy free, carefree, right? They don't really have to. They can kind of afford to be sort of just, happy, no problems. And when you're happy and have no problems, you're not really trying to come after somebody, right? Happy people don't go around stirring up shit, and right? But that's the part of like light skin privilege right there, being in a position where you can be happy, and because no one comes for you like that, right? When oftentimes people come for light skinned people, it's because of blackness, right? Their association with the blackness, right? So the light skinned folks who claim blackness, right? They do feel some type of a way when blackness is attacked, right? But oftentimes in the attacks, sometimes they don't even be applying to them, but they perhaps will feel offended. But I'm kind of getting mixed up and befuddled. But ultimately, where I'm getting at is just like sometimes, like light-skinned people kind of have the privilege to be kind of like happy and carefree in certain situations. And when you're happy and carefree, you probably would not be likely to say something negative to somebody or to stir up shit, right? Because you cool, you happy. Like happy, cool people don't cause issues, right? They don't really have any negativity to project, right? So they're just happy in their own thing. While other people, perhaps the brown skinned folks, like, well, they might feel a certain way, so let me kind of like attack the next person, right? Kind of like put their negative, like transfer their negative energy to like darker skinned people, right? Perhaps. Just a theory I got. But I'll bring this video to a close because I've been going on for long enough, alright? Sorry. I was like in the beginning of this video, I was like, no, it probably won't be too long. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I said that. But you know better by now. But thanks a lot for watching. Really appreciate it. Please feel free to comment. Please subscribe, thumbs up. I really appreciate the feedback, the comments, and support. I definitely learn a lot, and get things from people's experiences. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some trolls up in there too. But forget the trolls. Let's concentrate on like the positive, the positive people. Because a lot of times that's the thing too. We kind of sometimes can concentrate too much on the negative, especially when it comes to people's contributions. I'm like, I think when it comes to the contributions of people, just concentrate on the positive and just, ignore the negative stuff. Again, thanks a lot for watching. Adios and goodbye for now.